We're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Friday, February 13th here in Seoul. I'm Lee Soo-jin and this is News Generation. Joining us today is Grace.
Great to be here.
Great to have you. Also Fabius with us.
Great to be here again.
Great to have you. And both are here to speak on behalf of people in their 20s and 30s. So we've reached to the end of the work week, and with the weekend just around the corner, there's a little extra excitement in the air. And that's right, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. It's a day filled with love, romance, and of course, sweet surprises. So Grace, tell us, what are your plans for this special day? How do you and your husband like to celebrate Valentine's Day together?
Honestly, we don't have any special plans for Valentine's Day this year, but I might gift my husband some chocolate or sweets tomorrow. Actually, Korea has its own Valentine's Day custom where the woman usually gives the man a gift. And then there's a day called White Day a month later in March where the man gives the woman a gift. So I guess you can say that there are two occasions back to back where a couple can celebrate their love for one another.
Do you and your husband typically celebrate both days then?
We actually don't. We just celebrate Valentine's Day.
Hopefully he'll get that chocolate.
Yeah, I just want to get it over
I think it's so funny you're still debating whether to give him that chocolate tomorrow. So what about you, Fabi? What are your plans?
I think we're very lucky that this year Valentine's Day falls on a Saturday.
Right.
Fortunately, as a freelancer, I do have to work, so my heart goes out to all the people that have to work and cannot fully enjoy this pink day. But the 14th of February also marks the day that I first started my journey in Korea. So it's going to be my third anniversary since I started living here, so I have something else to celebrate, although I have to work.
So it really is a meaningful day for you. It's Valentine's Day and also your anniversary of first moving to Korea. So even if you're working, there's definitely something worth celebrating. So we're going to talk more about this, but first let's take a look at the screen. Valentine's Day is just around the corner, and with it comes a perfect opportunity to explore the evolving dating trends in Korea. As individualism takes center stage, more people are choosing to opt out of traditional dating or are meeting potential partners on their own terms. Today on News Generation, we dive into the changing dynamics of modern relationships, how people are connecting, what kinds of couples are emerging, and what personal values are shaping the way we date. As we just saw in a video, dating is undergoing some significant changes. With individualism on the rise and more emphasis on personal choice, people are rethinking traditional dating norms. And tomorrow's Valentine's Day, as we mentioned, a day typically filled with romance. But Grace, is it true that more people are actually choosing not to date at all?
Yes, it was interesting to see the results. But according to a survey conducted last year on single men and women by dating consulting firm PMI, it was found that 72% of respondents were not dating for the following reasons. So let's take a look at the screen. If we take a look at the pie, we can see that 38% of respondents said that they aren't interested in dating and that they view it as unnecessary. 36% said that they just haven't met the right partner. 17% said that they're avoiding the financial costs of dating, and the remaining 9% cited other reasons. It seems like this non-dating phenomenon is a reflection of how younger people in society today, perhaps they value their independence over sharing their lives with a partner. Since personal time, autonomy, and freedom to make whatever choices you want are important to millennials and Gen Z, I can see why that they're choosing to invest their energy into hobbies or self-growth instead of dating. Because dating actually involves spending money, time, and investing a lot of emotional effort as well.
Right, and that really shows how priorities have shifted towards valuing personal time and autonomy. But interestingly, that doesn't mean that young people have lost interest in romance. We see in the US and also Korea as well, dating shows are really popular. So why are they still so popular among younger generations, Fabio?
Well, even though the MZ generation generation is not dating as actively as previous generations, these dating shows are definitely becoming increasingly popular. When we see, for example, this international Western dating reality shows, we see that they get this top viewership ratings in the main streaming platforms. And among those, we also have the Korean dating shows that are making a lot of, popularity. They're getting a lot of popularity overseas too. Even my Korean friends here in Korea, they are totally obsessed with these programs and they love analyzing every single scene and the dynamics because it allows them to kind of like imitate the way of communicating and also project their own ideas and their standards onto those relationship dynamics. So it's all about kind of identifying the red flags or seeing the moments where they can start, feeling that tension that they can only see through the screen. So basically, it's experiencing dating life through media in a way that they cannot do in real life because there's this walls of societal pressure that really makes it hard to translate what is going on the screen into their real life. But it also allows them to create that inner discourse about how they would deal with those situations in their own perspective.
Right. And if they're not dating themselves, it's a way to kind of live vicariously through them as well. Exactly. And for our solo viewers, for young people today, where are young people meeting other people?
Yeah, it seems like aside from casual encounters at school or work, most people met through blind dates or even introduction by parents in the past. However, these days, more and more young people are meeting dating prospects through dating apps or social media. In fact, it's said that 70% of people in their 20s who have started relationships via social media have met through Instagram. It seems like the reason why people in their 20s and 30s view dating through social media in a more positive light is because they can conveniently meet and connect with new people without having to go through awkward introductions. And they can also easily find others who share their tastes right from the get-go. Furthermore, 4 out of 10 young people said that they have used dating apps, and 60% of those who have used them said that they actually signed up to find serious romantic partners.
So meeting through algorithms and feeds has become completely normalized now. And while views on dating and marriage are changing, there's another trend that stands out, which are the rise of matchmaking companies. So if marriage isn't really considered essential anymore, why are matchmaking companies becoming more popular?
Well, as you said, the idea that marriage is essential is not really that prevalent in the mind of the MC generation anymore. And let's talk, for example, about my home country, Spain. Most of my friends, actually all of my friends that are my age that still live in Spain, they have not married and are not considering marriage in the near future. So it really makes me wonder because in Korea, I actually do feel like marriage is a little bit more common than it is in my home country. But it definitely keeps decreasing, right? However, ironically, these rates of revenue for these marriage agencies keep increasing according to a report by the Yonhap News Agency. Kim Nando, a professor of consumer studies at Seoul National University, actually talks about this and says that a lot of people do want to find their partner. However, that has become a little bit more unrealistic and difficult in these times. So these marriage agencies become a very effective way of finding that perfect match that, pretty much allows people to find that perfect someone that is similar in terms of values and opinions, and finding someone that is on the same page is not that easy. So having a whole organism that does it for you becomes a great solution for most people.
So I guess it actually makes more sense because now that marriage isn't considered essential, people only want to marry if it's like the perfect partner.
Exactly.
Right? So it sounds like efficiency also now matters as much as romance itself, and that mindset is also reshaping dating styles and dynamics between couples. So are there dating trends today that feel clearly different from the past, Grace?
Yes, a recent analysis of dating trends in Korea by a dating app reveals the most striking change, the rise of couples where the woman is older than the man. It seems like the matchmaking rate of these couples take up 25% of all relationships now, and the shift reflects a societal change where perhaps more women are working now and they've gained financial independence than compared to the past. Another trend that we're seeing these days is the growing number of relationships between Korean men and Japanese women, so that's interesting as well.
I wonder if that's anything to do with, in a lot of couples, the woman's often the breadwinner these days. Also, like female celebrities, you also see the woman's like Korean celebrities older than
And the age gap is pretty significant.
It's also not small.
Yeah, I've seen like 10 plus years where
Oh,
the woman is a lot
wow.
older.
Right.
Yeah.
So this all reflects how gender roles and global connections are evolving. And with so many people now turning to dating apps, these platforms aren't just connecting users, they're also shaping how people date. So what new dating trends are app companies predicting for the near future, Fabio?
Well, among these new terms, we have hot take dating.
Ooh,
so this is
okay.
basically setting up your preferences, your political views, and your standards on the first date. That way you can ensure that communication is going to be very active between both parts, and you can also sense that, that relationship might actually take place in the near future. Why? Because both of them are on the same page. They have the same levels of empathy and the same values. According to the same survey that Grace just mentioned, at least 41% of participants said that they would not date someone that has opposing political views. Some of the biggest deal breakers are racial discrimination, family values, social etiquette, and also LGBTQ plus rights. And this comes from this sensation that people really want to connect on a deeper level. At the end of the day, it's not only about feelings, it's also about social responsibility. So finding that someone that stands on the same ground as you are and is on the same page is definitely something that a lot of people are prioritizing.
Right. It might seem intense in the beginning to start with such tough topics, but it makes sense for the generation that values efficiency. So that brings us to a more personal question. So we talked about some recent dating trends or cultures that are happening these days. So are there anything you can relate to, Grace, or find it a little harder to understand?
Honestly, I think if I was on the dating scene these days, I wouldn't feel all that comfortable meeting someone on social media like a lot of people do. I would personally feel safer meeting a partner through friends or an acquaintance, although that's not always a guarantee either. I guess I'm just not bold enough to go on these newer platforms and, put myself out there. And the prevalence of blind dates or 소개팅 in Korea was a new discovery for me actually when I first came here, but now I understand why a lot of people prefer them, since it's actually really hard just to meet someone on the street or like at a bar. And for some, it does feel safer to have a mutual friend or connection.
Right. So what about you, Fabio?
I definitely agree. I think obviously social media and this dating platforms are becoming very, very popular, but it is true that a lot of people do value that very natural encounter. Meeting someone offline on that kind of like romantic situation that we're all used to seeing in media, for example, but the reality is very different. And I think like we are becoming very, very uncomfortable with interaction with strangers on the streets, so it makes it even more unrealistic. On the other hand, I also heard about sogeting, which is like this culture in Korea that we have of knowing someone through an acquaintance. And when I first came, actually, it was a little bit shocking. And some Korean friends even told me if I had some friends that I could introduce to them, and I was like, isn't that a little bit awkward?
Oh, I guess you
Because-
don't do that in Spain.
No, not at all.
Oh.
So actually, from my point of view, that online dating system is obviously a little bit nerve-wracking because you're meeting someone that you have absolutely no connection with. But on the other hand, I actually find this sogeting system to be also nerve-wracking at the same time, because
Right.
you're meeting someone that already has, a connection with your circle. So the stakes are higher, The chance of failure is going to definitely feel more awkward than
And more
it is
personal.
with and more personal than it is with someone that is basically a random
Complete
stranger from the
yeah.
internet.
Right, I agree. So whether it's choosing to stay single, dating through an app, or redefining what partnership means, one thing is clear. Romance hasn't disappeared, it's just being rewritten. And those choices say a lot about how this generation lives and loves. And to get a more global perspective on this, we're going to talk to a young person from the US who's familiar with both the dating scene here in Korea and the US. That conversation will take place right after the break, so don't go anywhere.
NewsGen wants to hear from you. Go to YouTube and search out Channel Arirang News. Click Posts and cast your vote in the poll. Make a new type of news with us.
Joining us today is Jessica from the US, who's familiar with both Korea's and the US's dating scene. Hello, thank you so much for connecting with us today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So I'm gonna have to start out with a really personal question. Jazia, are you currently in a relationship? If so, how long have you been together? How did you meet? If not, is there a personal reason that you chose not to date?
Currently, I am not in a relationship. And the reason is just I'm in my last year of university and I want to focus on my career.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Okay, Jatsia, how would you describe the dating scene among young people these days?
Yeah, I definitely think people these days, both in America and Korea, are acknowledging that, just because you like a person and you want to explore, hanging out with them and spending time with them, it doesn't mean you need to spend the rest of your life with them. So a lot of the times people aren't really dating for marriage anymore, and casual dating is the most common type of relationship you'll see these days. In America, terms like situationships and flirtationships have gained a lot of popularity because of how common these types of relationships are. But a lot of people struggle in the dating scene now since communication often isn't clear about what level of commitment people are searching for. And so sometimes people get hurt because not everyone is looking for that casual type of relationship, and things kind of can end up difficult. But, yeah.
And what do you think that are the main differences between the dating scene in Korea and in the US?
I definitely think the biggest difference that I've seen is the level of standardization of what a relationship is meant to look like. I think in America, people talk very openly about the different types of relationships there are, the experiences they have, the type of people that they meet, and just people pursue things on a very individual level. So we talk very openly about different like sexual orientations and, the reasons that we might enter a relationship. And hearing all this so openly talked about from like friends, or even we have talks about this at school and stuff, it helps us to kind of pursue relationships in a very individualized way. So people don't really feel pressure to pursue a certain type of relationship. I did feel in Korea, though, that there's a very standardized and idealized image of what a relationship means. So people kind of explore love in a much more outward and kind of cutesy way. Like people match outfits. They celebrate things like 100 days and, White Day. There's even Black Day for singles and like Pepero Day. There's a lot more dedicated to relationships in Korea. Even like Christmas is considered a couple's holiday rather than a family holiday.
Yeah, that's true.
And people tend to say I love you really fast and get very committed. So it's very strong and outward, and people, I think, kind of strive for that type of image of a relationship. I had a lot of talks with my Korean friends, and they would always compare the things that their boyfriends were doing for them. And there seemed to be like a very ideal image of what everyone wanted their relationship to be. So I think the image of what's common and what's acceptable is much more singular in Korea.
That's really interesting. And it's also really interesting to think about how much of an impact culture has on the dating scene as well.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So we just heard from our guest from the US about her relationship status, how she sees the dating scene among young people, and what feels most different about dating in Korea compared to the US. So we've talked quite a bit about dating trends, but now I'm curious about what our panelists think. So how do you personally view these dating trends? And Grace, since you're married, I'm actually personally really curious too. What do you think is most important? What do you value the most in a relationship?
Well, I was really surprised by the survey findings, which showed that the younger generation, they're not as interested in dating compared to the older generations. But I can see why, though, because individualism and freedom to pursue various hobbies and careers are important and they're fun. So I don't really think that being in a relationship is necessarily like the ultimate goal in life for everyone. However, I've also heard that millennials and Gen Z are actually more afraid of failure in general, even when it comes to relationships, which I know firsthand are very hard to maintain and require work, lots of work from both sides. So if that's the reason that young people are avoiding dating, I want to encourage all of you to take chances and see dating as an opportunity for growth, maybe building more character, and for also building valuable experiences. And since you asked me what I think is the most important in a relationship, I think like I mentioned, relationships require so much work. So finding somebody that is willing to work through the hard times with you is, I think, the most important.
I think it's very profound, practical advice as well. What about you, Fabio?
I think this interview we just had is extremely enlightening. I think
It was, yeah.
dating is basically a social contract. Once you decide to have a relationship and take it to that level, it means that it's not only about feelings and just communicating in a natural way, it's about setting boundaries, preferences, and also goals together. So those expectations are definitely becoming more and more individual as time goes by. And also culturally, we have different ways of interacting with each other in those relationships, as she talked about the differences between the dating scene in Korea and in the US. I do feel like overall young people, they do have their own lives, they do have their own goals and their own passions, and they expect the other person to also adapt to those standards. The problem is that we all have so many standards and we are waiting for our partners to really adapt to those things so in such a constrained way that sometimes we don't let ourselves loose. And I do think that it's also very important to kind of set aside the emotions of it and the whole romanticism of it, aside from like your own personal goals and your own let's say societal pressure, because otherwise everything ends up crumbling together. So I do think that people need to loosen up a little bit in those expectations and kind of let things work out as they go. And definitely, obviously, you need to put in effort and try to help your partner into making the whole relationship work. But I do think that there's a lot of fear that comes with it.
I think that really lines up well with what Grace said too earlier about how, while it's good to romanticize a relationship, there's always a limit to it. It's good to appreciate the person as well. So as Valentine's Day approaches, it's a good reminder that love doesn't have to look the same for everyone. However you define it, what matters most is that it fits your life and your values. Whether people choose to date, stay single, or do something in between, one thing is clear. There's no single definition of romance anymore. And dating today is less about following rules and more about choosing what feels right for each person. And that brings us to the end of today's episode of News Generation. But News Gen will be back next Thursday after the Lunar New Year holiday at 10:30 a.m. Korea time with more stories and discussions. A big thanks to Grace.
Thanks for having me.
For coming in. Also Fabio.
Thank you so much.
And for our viewers, thank you so much for watching. And we hope you have a romantic Valentine's Day and a joyful Lunar New Year. We are News Generation.